The economic policies of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration have been tested and proven to a large extent as tending towards revamping the economy of the nation. The policies have been able to take the nation out of recession with premium on the empowerment of the people, as well as creating enabling environment for industrial growth. The ease of doing business through the proclamation of Executive Order 004 has been generating the desired results, with local and foreign investors having the confidence to invest in Nigeria's economy. The proper husbandry of the resources of the country has blocked the loopholes of filtering away the hard-earned commonwealth of the people, with the administration achieving so much in the area of infrastructural development with the available little resources. The administration's zero tolerance to corruption has equally assisted a great deal in the repatriation of looted funds stashed by some people abroad. Having leverage on this, the downtrodden are now the major beneficiaries of these policies, with emphasis on various social security programs that have brought smiles on the faces of the less privileged in the society. In specific terms, how has the administration been able to rejig the economy in the last 3.5 years? These are some of the issues to be put before the economic advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari, Dr. Dipeolu, who works directly in the office of the Vice President, who is our guest on Stepping Up today. My name is Kemi Fakeye. You're welcome. The program is Stepping Up, and we have as our guest today the economic advisor to the president, in person of Dr. Dipeolu, who works directly in the office of the Vice President. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's start by taking a look at how impactful has the various economic policies of the present administration in the last 3.5 years.
Thank you very much. I think the starting point is to recall that the economy was going through quite a difficult time in terms of falling growth rates, in terms of rising inflation, in terms of declining reserves, in terms of pressure on the exchange rate. And so the starting point, I think, would have been to see how to respond to all those issues. So following an initial strategic implementation plan, what government did was to adopt the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. And the utility of that plan is that it contains several responses, first to reverse the decline, but also to put the economy on a path of sustainable growth. And I think by and large, some of those things have been achieved. Take, for instance, the macroeconomic situation. The economy was declining pretty fast, and so much so that we got into a recession as a result of several other factors, including falling oil prices and falling production. But the critical thing is that we reversed direction. So the economy is now growing at an average of about 2% a year. But at some stage, it had fallen to a quarterly growth rate of -2.2. And I think in economic terms, that's important, reversing the direction of decline. And that, as you can see now, what you need to do is to ramp up the growth rate to meet the desired targets. Take, for instance, issues relating to inflation. At some stage, it had reached 18.7%. It's now down to a plateau of about 11.3%. Foreign exchange reserves had fallen to about $23 billion at some stage, but they're now at about 43 billion. At 43 billion, even though oil prices have not reached their historic highs of an average of 110 to 114. So on the macroeconomic front, I would say by and large that we've reversed direction in a fairly confident, solid manner. We have an exchange rate now whereby there are very little divergence between the parallel market rate and the official rate, the importers and exporters windows rate, so to speak. Now, with regard to the real sector, what you have has been a great improvement in agriculture. We've almost doubled our production of paddy rice. But there's been a great deal of response in agriculture across several areas: cassava, palm oil,
maize, sorghum, beans,
exactly.
you know, and
all that we've seen production increases. And I think the evidence of that is that we've managed to reduce our food bill substantially. I think we've saved over $30 billion in the past 3 years just by reducing our food import bills. And so even that itself, I think, is an important thing, because now we have to ensure that Nigeria can produce what it eats, which I think is very essential. And you found, of course, a great deal of people have gone back into agriculture. So I think that is important. I think also important has been the effect of the infrastructural investments by government. In other words, government has spent, just in 2016 and 2017 alone, 2.7 trillion naira on investments in infrastructure. And this, what is perhaps most interesting is that this is now verifiable. There was a time that you said that and people said, where is it? But now you travel on Lagos Ibadan, you can see it. Now, very respected senior people have gone to inspect the second Niger bridge. Everybody can see the Lagos Ibadan railway being built steadily. The Itakpe-Warri road is up and running, and people is being tested to see how it's functioning. What I'm trying to say is that those infrastructural investments have been taking place steadily. The transmission company of Nigeria, working quietly, has moved transmission capacity up to 8,100 megawatts. The point I'm trying to therefore make is that in the infrastructural space, in the real sector, in the macroeconomic sector, we've made substantial progress. But I think the most perhaps obvious to everybody is in the social investment programs, where because of the difficulties at that time, government felt it was important to support the generality of the populace in one way or the other. So you have that social investment plan program that has, for instance, the government empowerment and enterprise program, JEEP. We have the homegrown school feeding program. We have the conditional cash transfer. We have the Empower, which create jobs. And something often forgotten, we have the technological hubs program. Now, if you look at the homegrown school feeding program, up to 9.3 million people are being fed a meal every day, I think across 26 states. And of course, the intention is to take it to all the states. And in that same program, about 94,000 cooks have been employed who are participating in that program. But as I always like to say, the homegrown school feeding program is one of my favorites because it's a value chain program. It's a program that starts from the farmer who will sell his produce, say cassava, to the processor, who will turn it to garri, who will transport it to the point of use, so the transporter has also benefited. Then the cooks and their attendants. So across that value chain, you have a and it's in all, the intention is to have it in all 774 local governments, which means that every part of the country will benefit from that program. Empower, I also like a lot for two reasons. The first is that it has taken a large number of young people who are feeling despondent off the street, and you should talk to them, talk to the participants, 500,000 of them. So that's the first part I like, is that it's just giving jobs, it's giving hope to young people. But the other part is that there is a training component. So the first 200,000 who are taking already have their devices, their Samsungs, whatever their device is, Xerox, whatever. They work with them, but they learn, they're learning tools. So they have things there for them to learn about the jobs that they're doing. So those doing agricultural extension also have modules that they have to use to be able to provide better agricultural extension
add value to their produce.
Yes, the teachers can use it to teach, because then the modules they're going to teach the children are loaded on their tablets, and they can use it while teaching, and it guides them as to how to support in class. And I've seen it in action, and it's really very telling, and the children are attentive because they're being trained in a way that has taken account of the way children like to learn. And so what you find is that when the others get their iPads as well, that means you have trained 500,000 people who can then use those skills, not only on the job, but when they have to move on to the next level, will be able to secure jobs as data processors, as data analysts, as people who can work in the interface, the digital interface, so to speak.
But do you have to be computer literate to be able to operate these facilities?
Well, I think by and large, most Nigerians of that age really can find their way around computers, if only because of smartphones. But as I said, again, it's about learning. So there are things that even if you know how to put on the computer, there are things you need to learn on a daily basis. All of us need to learn on a daily basis. As far, which is good, 5,000 for the poorest of the poor. And that program, you have to get onto a social register. And guess how people get onto that register? It's people in their community that identify them and say, that's the poorest person here. Nobody really wants to be pointed out in the society as the poorest person. So if people point to you and you have no choice but to accept it, then it's clear that you are really in that band and you need help. Widows, the disabled, and people like that, you know, people who, you know, maybe their children are all gone, they need help. So they get that. They get 5,000 a month to help them. But more importantly, the idea behind GEEP, government empowerment, is to give support to those who need support to help themselves. So if I work as an artisan, or I work in a market, or I'm a trader, I get support, interest-free loans to build up my business. And I think that given the kind of people we are in Nigeria, a lot of us would prefer that to just being given a handout, as it were. In other words, let me help myself. And this came about because studies in Nigeria had shown that the two greatest constraints for micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria were finance and infrastructure. I'll talk a bit about that later, but the point is just to say that, so if you can have access to finance, most people would rather that so that they can expand their inventory, no matter how small, and they can continue to do their business. And a lot of us come from backgrounds where we can immediately appreciate what that can do for the family. So I would say yes, quite impactful in terms of macroeconomic policy.
You get feedback, you know, day to day, often on the impact of these programs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, apart from the fact that monitoring and evaluation was a fundamental part of the economic recovery and growth plan, we also send people out into the field to actually find out what is going on. And that's an interesting point you ask, because even when we see the vice president in the field, that's what he's doing.
Okay.
So that's what he's doing. So he goes to a primary school where the food is being served. He eats the food. He sits with the children, and he watches them being taught. Yes, you can say it was put on because he was there, but it's very difficult to put on something. You will make a mistake if you are not used to doing it on a daily basis.
Even among little kids.
Yes.
Before you ask them, they will say, the food is not, you know.
Yes, exactly. So he sits there and they interact, and they're used to interacting with the teachers in that way. So he's checked on Empower, he's checked on GEEP, he's checked on homegrown school feeding. He been there, he meets them. The Empower, he calls them, ask me questions, what is going on? And so we've even met homegrown school feeding program cooks. They told him that we haven't got the equipment yet, but they were at the early stage, they had just been brought on board, and they were just anxious to start. Yeah. But so, again, if someone hadn't given them the equipment genuinely, it would have come out there. Yeah. So it's important to understand that there's continuous feedback, apart from the conventional monitoring and evaluation. There's a check by the highest levels to see is this program functioning the way we wanted it to function. Okay, and so far? So far, we are happy. I mean, we're happy enough to the point that we think that what is actually required is more scale and more deepening.
There was this allegation that the government social investment program is only for APC states. How far is this true?
You know better than me that that is totally incorrect. The first place where the homegrown school feeding took place was Anambra State. I have been to non-APC states, several, in which the homegrown school feeding program is working. Several. You know, all you have to do is to do a quick check. I don't have the names of the 26 states there, but several states. In fact, some of the APC states are just coming on board. Edo came on board, I think, yesterday. You know, I don't think Lagos is on board yet. So I don't think that anybody can make that allegation. And the governors in the states that are benefiting will be the first to tell you that that is not the case.
Paying back of the trader money, how do you monitor in the payment and ensuring that the people that got 5,000 after paying back 5,000, that they will be able to get maybe 10,000 or 15,000?
Okay, let me explain trader money. I think it's a good time to explain trader money. The key thing about trader money is that it's a part of GEEP. Yeah. And GEEP, as I said, is a government empowerment and enterprise program. Note those two words. And JIP itself is part of the social investment program that I have just described. Now, trader money came from the realization and that within the components of JIP, there are those who have to have bank accounts, who have to belong to cooperatives, who can lend 50,000 naira and above. With a lot of effort, not more than 300, 400,000 could benefit. Then there's farmer money, where you can get over 300,000 to help you if you are a farmer. But that farmer also has to have a BVN, and he has to belong to a group where they have an aggregator who is responsible for making sure that those resources are used for the intended inputs. Now, trader money is for the people, the tabletop traders. And you'll be surprised in this country that those tabletop traders actually belong to a value chain. Yeah. So the people who sell little cubes of Nestle or Maggi cubes or whatever you call them, the retailer, the manufacturers knows them. They have a record of all those people down the chain, how it gets to the tabletop. So starting from that, those chains, we're able to establish those who are tabletop. But more importantly, it requires enumerators going directly to markets and enumerating people as they sell in front of their goods, okay. Right? So it's not, you can't just walk into a market and say, I like trader money. You have to be trading, as it were. And of course, the market associations are there. If someone just comes today, just because he thinks trader money is coming and set up a stall, where will you be allowed to put your things? You won't, they have associations. So if you're not a member, you can't just come in.
Let's take a short break at this point. We'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. The program is still stepping up, and the economic advisor to the president, in person of Dr. Adeyemi Dipeolu, is still with us, rubbing minds with us on the economic policies of the present administration in the last 3.5 years and how impactful it has been. Yes, you have spoken so much about macro, the issue of the social investment. Let's also talk about the issue of recession. When the present administration came on board, the economy went into recession in 2017. Well, barely 1 year, it was out of it. It has been still sustained. What has been the magic?
Thank you. I would not use a superlative like magic, but I would say that there was an intense, focused process to determine the best way around. And that process, which involved governments, state governments, development partners, the private sector, labor, National Assembly, was to come up with an economic recovery and growth plan, which all sectors of society could own. Okay. And now that plan identified 3 basic things. The first was to restore growth. How do we restore growth? Because we had fallen into a recession. The second was, how do we ensure that as we restore growth, we invest in the Nigerian people? Okay. How do we ensure that such a growth will be sustained over the long term? And third is, how do we build a globally competitive economy? How do we understand that we have our rightful place, we can accumulate reserves, we can export so that we can meet our import needs, and we can have fiscal buffers against future occurrence? And so under restoring growth, we felt that we have 2 options. Not 2 options, there are 2 directions. First is immediate macroeconomic stability, bring down inflation, improve the reserves, stabilize the exchange rate. And key to that we found was that we needed to restore oil production. At some stage, oil production had fallen from about 2 million barrels a day to about 1 million barrels or less than that. At the time, oil prices were also falling. So the important thing was therefore to focus critically on what needed to be done to bring the economy out of recession. So through a combination of factors, and it was difficult because it's very unusual to try and rein in inflation at the time you're trying to stimulate growth. Because usually reining in inflation is usually a tightening type thing, while growth is a stimulus type thing. But balancing it out, the central bank playing its own role to try and ensure that inflation did not spiral out, using mostly interest rate policy and mopping up of liquidity. The fiscal went on fiscal expansion. So basically trying to raise the resources to be able to put money into the economy so that you can help things to start growing. And of course also undertaking the efforts that restored oil production to where it was. And then the second part, of course, was in the real sector, to try and boost agriculture, boost manufacturing, boost the service sector, construction and all the things. But agriculture was the focus, and agriculture was important because it's only in agriculture that you can generate an immediate production response. Okay. So if you find that during the recession, agriculture was growing at 3%.
And the value chain is also more.
Yes, agriculture would create jobs. Agriculture will help you to be able to have exports. Remember I said we need foreign exchange.
Yes.
But agriculture is flexible. What do I mean by flexible? If you want to set up a manufacturing plant, the biggest in the world, the greatest in Nigeria, it takes 3, 4, 5 years. Agriculture, you can plant 8 cycles of tomato in 1 year. You can plant 3 cycles of rice in 1 year.
The weather is favorable.
Yes, you have the favorable weather. Once you get everything in stock, so we attack the problem of fertilizers, we attack the financial constraint through the Anchor Borrowers Program. In other words, putting in things that will help people to respond quickly in agriculture, initially, while continuing to work on the real sector to try and improve manufacturing. Manufacturing, for instance, I think we're in the 22nd month of an increase in what they call the Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, which is an index that sort of shows like a forward-looking indicator of how would the economy, what are the prospects for the sector going forward, you know, in terms of your inventory, in terms of your production. And so that's been relatively positive. So I think in that regard, you can safely say that those are some of the immediate measures to try and restore growth. In terms of building a globally competitive economy, that's the whole reason for the infrastructure. That's the whole reason. Improve the roads, get roads such that people can get produce out to the markets quickly. That would also impact on food prices. Improve the rail, both narrow and standard gauge, so that people can move, but goods can also move relatively cheaper. You know, improve broadband, such a way that people can transact electronic business. And I think we've made a target of about 30% of broadband coverage. We're now at about 31. In other words, putting all those things in place, power, roads, rail, power, working hard to revitalize the power sector, building some new power plants, but improving transmission and working to solve the problem at the distribution end relating to the ability, because if we don't pay at the distribution end, the whole chain falls apart. Because it's what we pay for electricity that helps the DISCO to make the money that it will pay to the transmission company, that it will pay to the generating companies. So you have to keep that chain liquid and you have to get the money flowing there. But in addition, you have had off-grid solutions. Solutions whereby you have the energizing markets, energizing economy solution. When you go to Ariaria, you go to Sabo, you go to Sabongeri in Kano, and working with the market associations and working with the private sector. We have private sector-led delivery of renewable energy, gas-fired plants, solar plants, to supply 37,000 shops in Ariaria, I think about 18,000 shops in Sabo. In other words, also beginning to emphasize off-grid renewable energy solutions to complement the existing grid.
Dr. Adeyemi Dipeolu, it's been nice talking with you on Stepping Up this week. Thank you for being our guest. We hope that when we call on you again, you will be there to talk more on how well the economy is doing, is performing.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Viewer, on this note, we shall be saying bye-bye on today's edition of Stepping Up. Thank you for being there. Join us again when we shall bring you another package of the program. My name is Kemi Fakeye. Bye for now.